Hey guys, today I'm going to rebuild some old arrows, and like anything else that you see on any of my videos, there's probably other ways this could be done. This just happens to be the way I do it. So you may learn something, but if you know something better, hey, shoot me a comment and I'll try it out. But before I go into that, I'd like to touch on archery in general. Archery products today have come a long way. I've been a bow hunter since 1985 or so, and I've watched the archery products really become innovative, and the technology is just next level, and that's great. I think it's awesome. The downside to that is that the industry would like for you to think that if you're not shooting the latest greatest, what you're shooting is obsolete or outdated, and it's just not good enough. And that's not true. So the arrows we're going to build today, I'm shooting a 35-pound recurve, and we're going to put some feather fletchings on some old arrows. First, before I start on anything else, I want to show you the tools that you'll use, and I'll show you that now. Okay, folks. Obviously, the first thing you're going to need is some old arrows. I've got some old arrows here that I bought at a yard sale. I bought that whole bundle of old arrows for $2. You'll need a cotton rag or paper towels will be fine. This right here is a green Scotch scratch pad. It's just a cleaning pad. This is a utility knife. This right here is a fletching jig and two different types of clamps for the fletching jig. And then I've got some Fletch tight glue and then fletchings. Now there's plastic fletchings and there's feather fletchings, and we'll talk about those in a minute. And then I have some acetone. Now you can use acetone, denatured alcohol, or just regular old rubbing alcohol. But this is all you're going to need. Totally, you might have $50 in what you see here, maybe a little bit more. I've accumulated these little tools over the years, but you may pay $50 or $60. Okay, guys. Once you got your arrows, which, like I said earlier, I bought a whole handful of arrows from a yard sale for $2. There's a good chance you could be driving down the road and see these things sticking out of the trash can, and there's a pretty good chance that they're going to be in good shape. Just like these arrows, 75% of them was very, very straight, and I've selected 4, and these all 4 happen to be the same size. These are 2016s, which is it's a smaller diameter. But when it comes to your arrows, the first thing you want to do is see if they're straight before you go on any further than that. You can do it one of two ways. You can lay the arrow on a flat surface and roll it, and if it makes a lump sound like flump, 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 you know you've got some straightness issues. But there's an easier way that I like doing, see if they're straight, and it's not rocket science, but it'll get you pretty close. Now I like putting a feel point on there, no matter what grain, and I like setting the arrow in the palm of my hand. And then I'll take my middle finger and my thumb and I'll spin it. Spin it as fast as I can. And I'll do it a couple times. And if it's straight, it'll spin nice and smooth. But if it's out of balance, it wobbles. You got some straightness. You got some arrow straightness issues, and you may want to discard it. Now, after you figure out which arrows are straight, if they're not straight, I'd toss them. It's not going to cost you anything to get rid of them. But if they're not straight, they're not going to do any good. Once you find out that they're straight, keep the straight ones, and then you'll start an inspection on these things. You'll want to look them over really, really good. And the faster you're going to be shooting, or the more modern bow you're going to be shooting, the more you really want to pay attention, because you don't want one of these things to break or blow up in your face. But I start from one end, whether it be the nock or the tip. I'll look, and I'll look for dings. I'll look for cracks, splits, knocks. What you're going to see a lot that's very common in arrows is you'll look down the side of one of these arrows and you'll see where it's been dinged by another arrow. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's not any good. It just shows that it's got some damage on it. What you're looking for is brittle arrows that maybe have hairline fractures you can't see, so you want to flex it just a little bit. You want to look at both ends to see if there's any fractures up through here, and as well at this end right here, both ends. Once you're satisfied, then you got to tear the old fletchings off. So that's what we're going to do right now. I'm going to show you how to take these, remove these fletchings, and then we'll move on from there. Okay, fellas. 99% of the time when you find these arrows, the fletching is going to be that old plastic fletching stuff. And sometimes there'll be a full fletching on there, sometimes they won't, but they come off really, really easy until you get down to this point right here where they're glued onto the actual shaft of the arrow. And it doesn't matter whether they're plastic or if they're feathers, you remove them exactly the same. Now what I'll do is I'll take an arrow and I'll just take and put it in the palm of my hand just like this. And I'll get a utility knife. The blade does not have to be sharp because you're not going to use a lot of pressure. You're not going to be cutting into this arrow. All you're going to be doing is running the top of this utility knife over the arrow shaft. Now the first couple swipes, you'll get quite a bit of material off these arrows. You don't have to push hard. And these happen to be very, very brittle because they're old and dry rotted. Now, once you get the main part of the fletching off, you're still going to see a bunch of that old glue still stuck on there, which you need to get it all off. All of it that you can, it needs to come off. And all you'll have to do is hold the arrow the same way and just lightly take your utility knife and just scratch that stuff off. Don't cut into the arrow. Just let it let the blade right over the top of it. And when it catches into that glue, you'll feel it catch, and you just run it back and forth. Now, once you start removing the fletchings, then you can feel over it. And if you feel some spots where there's quite a bit of glue left on there or some glue, you can always just touch it up. Just scratch. All you're doing is scratching that off there. You hear that? That's just a patch of glue that I didn't see, but it'll catch it. That little bitty old utility knife blade will get in there and do it. Now I'm going to finish. I'm going to go ahead and strip the rest of these arrows, and then we'll move on to the next step. Okay, now we got the bulk of that stuff off. Now we're going to go to the next step, which is kind of polishing and roughing up the shaft and maybe getting the rest of the small remnants of glue that might still be on there off. And all we're going to do is use a green Scotch scratch pad. And if these happen to be new arrows you're putting fletching on, then I like to stop. I like to put my fingers where the arrow size is, because this Scotch pad will remove the size arrow to where you can't see it if you're not careful. But what I do, I just take and hold it like that, and I really clean it up good. And all you're doing is just holding it in between your fingers and really cleaning the crap out of it. Again, you're just grabbing it. Now, if you're all worried about scratching the paint off or scratching the camouflage that the arrows may be, I mean, I'm not that particular. But if you are, then you may want to use a little less abrasive scratch pad. But overall, you're not really going to make that big of a difference. You're just kind of cleaning and roughing it up. Okay, guys, it really is that simple to clean these down. Now the next thing we're going to do is prep them to have the fletching glued onto it. Okay, this cleaning process is super simple. This happens to be acetone. Like I said, it doesn't matter. You can use regular alcohol, denatured alcohol, acetone, That's basically all I've used, but it doesn't matter. What you're wanting to do is remove the oils and other things from the shaft. So all I do is get a little bit of a acetone or whatever your solution you decide to use on your rag, and then just really clean it. And all I'm doing is laying this shaft down in the rag and squeezing it and cleaning it. Now, if you've got a table that has a finish on top of it, you can do just what I did. And I've cut a piece of cardboard where it lays over the top of a little workbench, because your wife may get mad. She comes in there and sees where you've got some acetone on some finish, and it strips it all the way down to the wood. Now, these arrows are prepped and ready to be fletched. One thing I want to add that I didn't tell you at the beginning is that when you start stripping these, make sure you leave these nocks on. Now, there are two different style of nocks. They are the glue-on nocks, which that's what these are. This is a glue-on knock. To get this knock off, you'll have to break it loose, and sometimes they break completely. Sometimes you can reuse them. But I went ahead and bought some new knocks from my local archery shop, and then, of course, if I can reuse these, I'll reuse these. Anyhow, let's go to the fletching. Okay guys, let's talk fletchings just a minute before we get started. There are two types of fletching. There are a plastic or a vinyl version of fletchings, and then there are feathered. They come in a wide variety of lengths. I usually stick with about a 3 or 4 inch. They say that maybe a little longer feather fletching is better in the long run, but you know, I just kind of stick with something simple and across the board, so I just kind of stick with a 4-inch fletching. Now, there are two different ways that you got to treat the two different fletchings. Now, the feather fletching, I don't worry about doing much to it. However, there is a difference with your plastic fletching. Now, a lot of times when you buy these, you can buy them in bulk, dozen, 2 dozen, whatever. They have a lubricant or preservative on it that's kind of oily. So, as you can see, these will have a trench in them. If you can see that, there is a little valley all the way down through there. Now, you don't have the valley in your feather fletching, so what you'll need to do is count out however many fletching you want to use, and then take a Q-tip and you'll dip it in your acetone or whatever your cleaning solution is, and then you'll really clean this. Just wipe it off a couple times and let them set and dry before you put them on. Usually by the time that you get to the last one you're gonna clean, they're already ready to put on. Now, the feather fletching, they're a little bit different. Obviously, it's from a live or from an animal, and there's going to be porous material. And this is a foamy, pithy type material that's on the inside of a feather. We've all seen it before. And there's two different types of glue you can use. A lot of people like using that stuff like super glue. I don't like it. It seems to make the base of the fletching brittle, and it doesn't last as long, in my opinion. However, it dries a whole lot faster. You can almost take and put a fletching into the clamp, stick it onto the arrow, let it set for a couple seconds, and pull it off. To where if you use a fletch type, like I'm going to use, it's just a Bonning fletch type. Now, Bonning makes really good archery equipment. There's a lot of stuff out there. Use what you want to use. It's just that this is the kind of stuff, some of the stuff they just sell at Walmart or wherever. But if I get a choice, I like this Bonning stuff. But it's called Fletch Type, and this happens to be Fletch Type Platinum. It doesn't make any difference. It's kind of like a rubberized like a rubber cement. Onto the jig. There's a difference. Now the jig is a bonding jig. It is adjustable, so if you have a straight clamp or a clamp with a helical on it, which I'm getting ready to show you now, this here is a straight clamp. You see how the edge is just straight? That's what you're going to use with your plastic fletchings. I don't usually put a helical on my plastic fletchings. I just use a straight clamp for that, usually because I'm shooting a newer bow and it's going to shoot flatter and straighter. But if you need your arrow to flatten out a little bit faster and be a little more accurate with your slower moving arrows, like your recurves and other slower moving arrows, or feathers in general, you're going to want one with a helical. If you can see that, you can see the twist. It's not a straight clamp. And what we're going to use today, we're going to use the clamp with a helical. Now this is a right helical. I don't know the degree on it. You can get them in different degrees. To me, it really didn't matter as long as it had some type of helical on it. And the helical is actually, all it does is put your arrow on with a little bit of spin to it. And as you shoot it, the arrow will leave and then it will start to rotate, which will cause it to be more accurate because you're going to get some spin on it. And if you're shooting slower archery like a recurve, always, if you got a clamp, use a helical clamp. But let's get started on putting these fletchings on the arrows.